violent clashes,
Sweden's gang wars.
Do you remember when Sweden was seen as a shining example of the Scandinavian welfare state? American liberals admired it, and even Europeans respected its status as a leader among nations. But what has gone wrong now? After World War II, Sweden became known for its strong economy, stable democracy, and social harmony. It had excellent healthcare and education systems, along with social and gender equality. Crime rates were low and ethnic conflicts were rare. Today, Sweden faces a stark reality. It has the highest rate of gangland killings in Europe and the youngest serious offenders, with children as young as their early teens being arrested for murder. Parts of the country are labeled especially vulnerable areas, effectively no-go zones where police struggle to maintain control. In these areas, local gangs rule, and first responders require flak jackets and police escorts. The Sweden of today is a far cry from its former image. Where is the country headed? Sweden is in the grip of a crisis unlike anything it has ever faced. In Stockholm, gun violence surpasses that of London by a staggering 30 times. This surge in crime is fueled by a brutal gang war, primarily orchestrated by individuals with a migration background. The country's reputation as a welfare state with welcoming asylum laws has attracted a large number of immigrants. Since the 2000s, Sweden has experienced a steady influx of newcomers, peaking at over 160,000 in 2015. Shockingly, nearly half of these non-Western immigrants are unemployed, relying heavily on government welfare. They are concentrated in impoverished suburbs, struggling to integrate into Swedish society. Despite these challenges, Sweden's gun crime rates, while alarming, are still significantly lower than those in the United States. With an average GDP per capita of $60,000, Sweden is one of the wealthiest nations globally, boasting a life expectancy of 83 years and world-class healthcare and education systems. However, its difficulties with immigrant integration and productivity is proof of how they are struggling with managing the current state of affairs. Understanding Sweden's challenges with migration and integration calls for a deeper dive into its history and policies. Sweden's welfare state, praised for its care of the elderly, sick, unemployed, and refugees, has a surprising history. Contrary to what you might expect, Sweden achieved prosperity before establishing its extensive welfare system. Back in the 1870s, Sweden faced economic difficulties. With an average GDP per capita only half that of Great Britain, 3/4 of the population lived off farming, a challenging life in the semi-Arctic environment. Despite these hardships, Swedes developed a strong work ethic, placing value on hard work, individual responsibility, and family values. During the industrialization era, Sweden transformed into the world's fastest-growing economy, known for its reliable, hard-working, and responsible citizens. Despite remaining neutral in both world wars, Sweden established a more restrained welfare state compared to what exists today. Its prosperity was built on free market policies and minimal government intervention. Significant welfare reforms were not implemented until the 1960s. The idea of folkhemmet, or people's home, became popular. It portrays Sweden as a family where citizens care for each other like siblings. This philosophy partly explains Sweden's welcoming approach towards refugees. Today, Sweden's welfare state provides incredible benefits to all citizens, including immigrants. For example, each parent is entitled to 240 days of parental leave when a child is born or adopted, and retired couples receive payments almost equal to their pre-retirement income. How cool is that? Here was a welfare state renowned for its remarkable healthcare and education, both provided free of charge and considered among the best in the world. But as with any fairy tale, there was a price to pay: taxes. In 1950, the personal income tax was 21%, but by 1995, it had ballooned to 52%. As the years passed, the kingdom saw a significant rise in the number of non-EU migrants, reaching 12% of the population by 2013. However, as the story continued, it was revealed that some migrant groups, such as those who fled Saddam Hussein's Iraq in the 1980s and 90s, were highly educated, but struggled to find their place in the kingdom's workforce. The story was different for similar migrants in the United States, who found greater success in employment and income. Unfortunately, Sweden's plan to scatter new arrivals across the country backfired spectacularly. Migrants were dumped into rural areas with dismal job prospects, forced to fend for themselves without community connections. With two-thirds of jobs secured through inside channels, non-Swedish speakers faced a brick wall. Integration became a cruel joke. By the 2000s, the wave of humanitarian migrants pushed Sweden's welfare state to the brink. The peak came in 2015 when 163,000 refugees, many from war-torn Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, poured in. Within years, a full 20% of the population had foreign roots, segregated in urban poverty ghettos, excluded and unwanted. Resentment exploded. Out of these underworlds came vicious criminal gangs made up of second-generation immigrant youth. Teenagers were groomed into drug rings, illegal rackets increased, and mobsters infiltrated government agencies and political parties for their own benefit. The gangs now fight deadly turf wars to control impoverished neighborhoods. What began as compassionate immigrant policies paved the way for imported violence and lawlessness to take root. Over half the inmates rotting in Sweden's prisons are first-generation immigrants. 45% of the unemployed population are also immigrants from outside Europe. Can you believe that? This has torn apart Sweden's self-image as a humanitarian nation. Sure, most don't want full capitalism, but there's a growing demand for major reforms to stop the immigrant chaos. Sweden is being accused of racist policies by making it harder for non-EU immigrants to get social benefits. Even kids with two foreign parents get less help. The government forces preschool too, all to make little kids learn Swedish. But is it too late? An early flare was shot in 2017 when US President Donald Trump quipped about what's happening last night in Sweden. His insinuation of riots was met with mockery at the time. Who could believe such chaos in peaceful Sweden? Well, no one's laughing now. Sweden has descended from an inspirational model to a cautionary warning. As gang lawlessness spills across borders, nervous neighbors like Denmark watch the Swedish condition with fear. Could the immigrant violence infect them too? In a startling move, Sweden has crossed an old taboo, calling in military forces to aid overwhelmed police. The spiral has degenerated so drastically that even the head of Sweden's central bank raises alarms. Erik Thedéen bluntly told recently that the explosion of shootings and bombings now risks strangling Sweden's economic growth long-term. Let that chilling warning sink in. Even if the government were to slam the door shut on further immigration, Sweden's foreign-born population would continue to rise, thanks to demographics. Why? Well, the foreign-born folks tend to be younger on average than native Swedes, so they're having more babies and driving up the growth rate. And that's not even factoring in cultural preferences for larger families among some immigrant groups. Among 25 to 34-year-olds, a third have a foreign background. And for the 35 to 44-year-olds, it's 1%. Sweden's fresh coalition government, elected in September 2022, is gearing up to tackle the crisis head-on. Justice Minister Gunnar Strömmer is leading the rest, championing a call for systemic change. But what do you think it means? We would love to hear from you. Subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. Hit that bell icon to get notified when we posted a video. Thanks for watching.